Well, today we're celebrating Swami Kriyananda's the anniversary of his birthday. Technically tomorrow is the anniversary, and we'll celebrate tomorrow too. But because today's service gives us a chance to, more of us to be together, last night there was a live streaming of the Bhumi Puja in America at the Crystal Hermitage for the groundbreaking ceremony for the building of the Moksha Mandir for Kriyanandaji's body. And it was very beautiful, but in the very beginning of the broadcast, they turned the cameras on before it had started. And so there wasn't really much to look at except for the people coming in. And as I was watching some, there wasn't many people there yet, but these were all people, many of them that I've known for 30, 40 years. And it's a little bit like looking down from heaven. This is, here in Noida, and observing what's going on down there, what's going on over there, what's happening here. And of course, the grounds there at the Crystal Hermitage are so beautiful. And there's in the backyard, there's a pool and the building, and then this incredible view of the Yuba River Valley. And I mean, there's hardly, it's just all forest. I think at nighttime there's one light way on the other side. So it's just a beautiful, natural environment. And as I watched and remembered the purpose of the ceremony, I began to feel this, flooding of connection. And if you think about your earthly family, you think about the time that little so-and-so, fell down and bruised their knee, and the time we went to this amusement park or on vacation, or the time when the house almost burned down, or, whatever those milestones, graduation, sports events. And the Ananda family, we've had all those. We had fire and every kind of up and down that a family can have. But when you feel the purpose behind those experiences at Ananda, they feel very different than an earthly family. And today I want to talk a little bit about that difference and to emphasize where that difference has come from. How did that difference occur? When I came to Ananda, I came from a very dysfunctional family, a family that did not really get along. I had never experienced what I would describe as a happy family environment. Oh, we had our good days, but they were surrounded by many days that weren't so good. And when you live in an environment that is caustic, which is difficult to be in, which is just not comfortable for whatever the reason might be, it becomes very difficult to imagine that anything else can exist. And of course, this is one of the reasons why fairy tales are popular. We imagine something greater. We imagine something that is perfect, something that is whatever our ideal might be. And if you imagine heaven, your imagination of what heaven should be would be different than somebody else's. There are certainly some similarities, but everybody might have, in the American Indians, they would say when you go to heaven, you die, you go to the happy hunting grounds. So that would be their idea. And you know, each area of interest of life, that the heaven would be their area of interest. As a young man, I loved to go surfing, so my idea probably would have been, I don't remember thinking this, but you know, surfing in heaven, the ultimate surfing spot. And whatever it would be, that would be your vision of heaven. When I found the autobiography of a yogi and was presented with this incredible vision of our potential for knowing God and being happy, I was really interested in that, but I wasn't experiencing it. Yes, I experienced the inspiration of Yogananda's influence on my life immediately, but he had a, you know, they say diamond in the rough. I was really rough. I was really restless. I was, you know, challenged by life. And oftentimes when we become challenged, we become angry. And I was angry at a lot of things. When things didn't go my way, you know, which was most of the time. And I was not shy about expressing that that point of view. And it got me into even more trouble on many occasions. When I came to Ananda, I found an environment in which the spirit that Yogananda was expressing in the autobiography of the yogi was being manifested. And of course, if you can imagine on a ship, they're in the ocean, and the ocean's rough. But what is it that breaks the waves and makes it easier? That the front, the bow of the ship, that the part that breaks new water, new ground, and pushes things out of the way so that the rest of the ship can be safe. And that, of course, was Kriyanandaji. He was the one who was in front. And like the classic picture of the mother duck and all the little ducklings coming in behind, this was us. And we did this all the time. Swamiji would start walking and we'd be walking behind him trying to keep up. And literally, I mean, walking down the street this would happen, but also in terms of trying to manifest this vision that he, not that he had, but that he was attuning to. This vision of what Ananda would become. It wasn't like he had, you know, was given blueprints by Master, and okay, and now here's what I want you to do in the 80s, you know, and here's what it looks like. Oh, and these people are going to show up. Now this guy, he's a troublemaker, so be careful about him. No, Master didn't do that. Swamiji had to figure it out as he went along. Just like all of us. We have to figure out our lives as we go along. But he had this incredible tool of attunement, inner attunement. And just like all of us, we arrived one day and we took, you know, a beginning meditation course. And we sat there going, oh, this is really, you know, not so easy. and then we persevered. Swamiji did the same thing. He started with autobiography of a yogi, and yes, he came to the ashram with Master. That's a big deal. But the same process had to take place. And this is what I found in Ananda, where people were going into that process being led by Kriyanandaji, who was never a teacher. He would, if you said, oh, you're a teacher, he said, no, I wouldn't describe myself as a teacher. He said, he shares. He never had that sense of, I know what I'm talking about, you should listen to me. He didn't need it, because by not acting that way, you were free to connect to the spirit that he was sharing. And his intention was always to share God and Guru. He never felt that he had anything more than tools to use to help them accomplish their goal in this world. And so when he shared, he was shared like a happy a participant. You know, in other words, he didn't share like the knower of all. He shared like the person who, yeah, I'm doing this too. And he had to explore how to share. He said even there was a point at which he took a public speaking course. He studied different ways of communication. He studied different philosophies and religions in order to be better at what he did. He didn't just, master, touched him blessed him on the spiritual eye, and suddenly he knew everything to say, and everything was good. No, it was a great challenge. In fact, if you think about it, you get married, you have a couple kids, maybe you have 4 kids. I don't know, there's families in America, they have 10, 20 kids. Can you imagine that? Oh my goodness. Kriyanandaji had hundreds of kids. Literally. Okay, Dad, what are we going to do now? And he seemed to be able to lead us without telling us what to do. He had this way of inspiring us to tune into what would be useful. And this is something that's very different than any group that I've. There must be other groups that are like this, but I haven't met them. The idea that instead of somebody telling you what to do, you have to tune into it and figure out how you can harmonize with it in the best way based on, who you are and what you can accomplish. I mean, sometimes people who want to be helpful, they come in and say, okay, here, let me sing the song. But they have a terrible voice. It's not enough just to be, willing to do something. You have to be able to accomplish the task as well. This is something that Swamiji taught us, and Master was incredibly practical. He gave very specific advice at times about, okay, here's what you do. You do it like this. And he talked about how to keep your room clean. He said, okay, as soon as you're done with something, put it away. I don't think he was saying that that's the only way to keep your room clean. But he was being very specific about being, practical. And even Sri Teshwar made him be practical because as a young man, Yoganandaji's tendency was to be lackadaisical about details. And Kriyanandaji would, if you watched what he did, the way that he lived, you found this practicality, and then this intense spirituality. And he used that in such a way that when we were with him, we were inspired to try to be like him. And he never presented himself in such a way as that you were in such awe that you couldn't try. You know what I mean? There's some people, if they're so good at playing the violin, it's like, forget it. But he didn't make us feel like stopping. He inspired us to try our best. And one of the ways that he expressed that, I remember, this was in the 80s. He was speaking at a conference of a number of the well-known spiritual speakers at the time in America. This was Deepak Chopra when he was on his early ascent, and Louise Hay, who is very well known in America as a kind of a new age, positive thinking person, self-actualizing your spirituality. And she introduced Swamiji in a way that I was touched, and I think that she reached a core of truth about, maybe a quality that represented Swamiji very well. And she said, she introduced him, mentioned some of his accomplishments, but then she said, he's the kindest man that I've ever met. And I think that was really true for me. I was fortunate to see Swamiji meet many, many people all around the world in a wide variety of circumstances. And I never saw him act in any way that wasn't kind. Ever. Even, I'm thinking of a time when a fellow was being very rude to him at the meditation retreat. And the fellow was a little, I think he was a little mentally imbalanced. And he was accusing Swamiji of being, less than perfect. And of course, this guy was qualified to know, And Swamiji went into the spine and never put out any negative energy of defense towards his fellow, but simply said, I'm not responsible to you, I'm only responsible to God. And he said it strongly, but usually when somebody says something strongly, there's a little bit of an edge to it. You can feel that little bit of edge, that little bit of, the sword is out, and maybe they haven't cut their head off, but they've, jabbed it in a little bit, No, nothing like that. Never had that edge. I never heard him have an edge. And his core was kind. He always responded to with strength, but also with kindness. And time again, he proved his loyalty to the value of people are more important than things, which is one of the Ananda principles that we try to live by. And invariably, if there was any monetary dispute, so-and-so thought that they should be getting such and such, he always went in the direction of a giving nature. He would never hold back from anybody because he said, look, this is only money, but here's my friend. Why would I want to give up this friendship just for this stuff? Even if they're wrong, even if maybe they're have exaggerated knowingly or unknowingly what the situation is. He wouldn't want to have that kind of spirit from his point of view. And it's not that he wouldn't want it, he just didn't have it. It wasn't like he had to fight to keep, oh no, I've got to be nice. No, he was just nice. It was just his nature to be that way. And we found this time and time again, how no matter what the circumstance would be, and no matter how challenging it would be, he always manifested this embracing, this inclusion, this sense of oneness. And at this ceremony, and the people were coming in, and then Durga, how many of you met Durga? She spent time in India. Not only a few of you, okay? Durga and Vidura spent quite a bit of time in India over the years. But they've been members since the 70s. And it was kind of fun because you know how at big events on television, and they have what they call the color commentator? So whatever's going on, when the action stops, somebody comes in and comments on it. Says, okay, and you just saw such and now such and such is going to happen. And so, the the online thing is getting more and more sophisticated. So that they had Durga as a color commentator. While the people are walking in and it starts, she's explaining what's going to happen and giving a little bit of history on the Crystal Hermitage. And it was just so sweet. It was, and she wasn't like, you know how announcers take on a certain persona? It's like, here's what an announcer's supposed to look like, and they kind of get into the role, and they put on this very fake, formal kind of way of acting. And she was just Durga, just it was such a beautiful picture of what it is that Swamiji has created through his influence in the lives of all of these people. And I think that this is, oftentimes we talk about a person's legacy. We talk about all of the things that they've accomplished in their life. And certainly Kriyanandaji had a whole list of stuff, everything from the books and the music and the communities just strictly on a physical level. But I believe that the most real legacy, the power that will continue to, and has in this last year, been so incredibly powerful, is the power of the transformation of the people who have fully embraced this as their spiritual family. And when people's hearts have been touched and their lives have been changed, and that they are then no longer living for what we say, I and mine. We're no longer living for making sure that I and my physical family are well. That we begin to live for God. That we begin to reach out and live for that larger family and realize that God takes care of those most fully who enter into that relationship. But that isn't even why we do it. We don't do it because God will give us something, except that God will give us happiness. God will give us well-being. And so on one side, there's Kriyanandaji described most families as us four and no more. And your home is your castle. In America we say that. Your home is your castle. Okay? And that means you should put up a moat and defenses and don't let anybody mess with your home. But at Ananda, it's a completely different frame of reference. It's, what is God trying to do here? How can I give, not what can I get? How can I serve, not and support rather than defend and protect? And when we live that way, as I was watching the event progress, you begin to see more and more people are coming in, and you see the spirit with which they're living. And again, as I mentioned, many of these people I've known for a long time, and now I'm thinking, wow, they kind of look old. And of course I've observed certain changes in the way I look as well. And the thing is that you can see in their demeanor, in their vibrations, the value of the lives that they've lived. And it is so unassuming. There's just nobody that doesn't exist at Ananda. And I personally just find that thrilling. I find that engaging. It makes me feel humble, and it makes me feel thankful and grateful to have been associated with such a fine group of people, really. And the ceremony itself, Jyotishan Devi spoke and led the group, and then the actual fire ceremony was led by Nayaswami Jayaji and Janaji. So, and Dharmini and Dharmarajan were there. So India was very represented. And then they did something that was really nice, was that when we chanted the mantras, the Gayatri and the Mahamrityunjaya mantra. They had Swamiji chanting it with us. So we chanted with Swamiji doing that. It was very powerful, and somebody asked me not long ago, maybe it was at the class, one of the classes last week, I was talking about the videos and the value of the videos of Swamiji. And the person says, well, it's not really the same when you're watching a video. I don't know, it's pretty darn good. When you project yourself and attune yourself to what's going on there, it is incredibly powerful. And I really encourage you all to take advantage of all of the stuff that's going on. I mean, yes, if you can come and do it in person, great. But if you can't, instead of watching some crazy other thing in the evening, watch one of the videos or participate in one of the online classes. I've checked out a number of the online classes, and they're great, really. You meet more of the acharyas, and you begin to get the flavor of and the spirit of and the influence of this energy flow that Master through Swamiji has projected into the world. And this is in our own best interest, but it's also a part of our spiritual responsibility in order to attune and then channel this light. And each and every one of us should, in your own way, recognize our responsibility to act as channels for the divine. And you say, well, I don't know how to do that, or I don't know when to do it, or where to do it, or what it should look like. But through your meditation, through your attunement, you will be inspired, you'll be in the right place at the right time, and you'll meet somebody, and then you'll talk about the spiritual life with them. You don't need to worry about it. All you need to do is invite God to guide your life and to inspire you to act in this way. And at the end of the, let's say that the mantras, and then they crack the coconut, Jaya cracked the coconut. And then at the end, all the singers came up, and they sang in the beginning too. But they sang Many Hands Make a Miracle. And this, of course, is the whole story of the path of self-realization. And of every avatar who's come into the world has inspired people who have joined hands and hearts together and then spread the light. And this is what we are all being invited to take part in. And when I was growing up, and if you'd said that God exists, I said, well, who knows? Nobody really could know, because I certainly never met anybody, heard about anybody. Wasn't convinced that Jesus knew, because all of his followers didn't seem to know that much. But I think what we see is that our sense of the proof of God's involvement in this creation, we think that it should look like something more dramatic. Well, like Jesus walking on the water. Okay, that's raising the dead. That's like something that I can't explain. Therefore, it must be, universal power of some kind. Miracles. Thank you. But the key here is to recognize that the miracle, think about what you read about in the news every day. The disharmony, the fighting, the cruelty, the injustice, the sickness, it just goes on and on and on. And yet, at Ananda, you find a community that is 95% well-being and 5% having a bad day. Where in the rest of the world, it's 95% having a bad day and 5%, oh, isn't this fun? And it's the same planet at the same time. This is truly the most valuable miracle for us. If Jesus can walk on water, well, that's great for him. I mean, I don't really know how often he has a large body of water to get to the other side. But it doesn't do that much good for us unless there's a message underneath it. And this is the message that all of the great ones bring us. The message that not that we need to walk on water, but we need to be able to experience joy no matter what is going on in life around us. And this is the message, but the manifestation of Swami Kriyananda's life. This has been my experience of that, has been always to be in this. It was like we lived in a bubble. Except then we realized, like that song, I'm the bubble, make me the sea, that the bubble there is no bubble. It's all one. And in the beginning, yes, you have to protect your joy, but eventually it's so strong that nothing can bother it. And we've seen over the years that Ananda's joy has weathered the storms of outward challenge. So, much of the time we talk about the spiritual life as being very impersonal. And because we're tuning into universal consciousness, not ego consciousness. And we consider ego, my ego is me personally, me separate from everyone else. But the gift that the masters give in this world of our spiritual family is both impersonal and personal. And I observed over the years that Swamiji began to express this balance of personal and impersonal. It must be rooted in infinite spirit. But then you can become the kindest person that someone ever met. That's personal. If it wasn't personal, you wouldn't be touching this other. You wouldn't really be fully engaged. But it has to be rooted in infinite spirit, not in ego. Because the ego is not capable of being in tune with and experiencing our potential for well-being, our potential for accomplishment, whether it be through the mind, through the heart, or through our actions in life. So, when somebody has a birthday, you give them, we come and give presents. And of course, what you give to the person, every year we struggled with this. What do you give to the man who needs nothing? It's like, and in the end, the gift that, of course, that Swamiji most valued was the gift of our attunement to God. The gift that he felt that he had, in some small way, been able to help us to do this. This was the gift to him, that his efforts were being utilized. And that we were manifesting his purpose. And if we think about what we can do in appreciation and celebration of Kriyanandaji's life and of Masters and the Avatar's mission in this world, it's to live it and to share it. And the more we give that in that way, the more we attune ourselves, the more we share it, the more we make it the central reality of our lives. This is the gift. This is they say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. That means when you copy what somebody else does, unless you're making fun of them, you're saying, wow, I like your style. I like what you're doing. When we enter into the love and joy of spirit, we're saying, Lord, I like your style. And this is one of the early ways in which we manifested our spiritual enthusiasm in the village was we created the Future Saints Club. The Future Saints Club. You know, we didn't want to be Boy Scouts. We wanted to be Future Saints Club. And each and every one of us is, by default, in the Future Saints Club. Because this is life's reality, life's purpose. So each and every one of us has got to get used to that idea and to practice. Practice being a saint. Practice being a saint. And if you want to practice, then you've got to find someone to imitate. Imitate the life of the masters and Swamiji's life. And you will find no more practical way to be joyful in all circumstances and deeply aware of the reality of the infinite joy, peace, and wisdom of God's reality and presence in our lives. This is the example of their lives, their gift to us, God's gift to us. And for that, I know that I can say on behalf of all of us, thank you, Lord, thank you, Swamiji, and Master, and Babaji, for sending all these great ones to bring Kriya Yoga to us. This is just the greatest thing. And so it should just make us smile. Okay, namaste.